Okay, okay. Okay, okay. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our workshop. Thank you for being here with us, here in the room, through Facebook, and also through Zoom. Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Paula Villegas, who's here with us this afternoon. And well, let me introduce her to you. Dr. Paula Villegas is an associate lecturer in academic English and TESOL at the International Education Institute in the University of St. Andrews in the UK. She has over 10 years of experience in teaching English for academic purposes in China and in the UK. Paula has recently completed a doctorate in education exploring perceptions of flipped learning in an online English for academic purposes professional course. Her research interests include foreign language, OL motivation, academic literacies, and legitimation code theory. She is a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy, an associate fellow of LCT, and a member of the Technology Education in English as for specific purposes in CIG. Well, today we actually Dr. Paula is presenting this workshop from TEFL to TEAP, Exploring Careers Path in TESOL. As I was able to share with you, these professional academic careers are very personal and can be difficult to navigate. In this interactive workshop, participants will have the opportunity to share their career aspirations, and Paula will share her professional academic journey to illustrate different career options. This relaxed and friendly session will conclude with an informal discussion on careers and academic pathways in TESOL. Well, let's welcome Dr. Villegas.
Thanks everyone for having me here. So as I've mentioned, and as has been mentioned in this lovely introduction, thank you very much. This is a bit more of a workshop, so rather than me talking at you, I hope we can all discuss our ideas together. So I'll try to stay put and share the microphone. And if I can get the next slide, please. Thank you. So I thought we could start by talking a little bit about career aspirations and what is it that we want to do with our careers. I'm also going to talk a little bit about ways to get into academic careers in the UK, but I'll try to give a bit more of a global perspective as well. So I'll try and include other places where you can start your academic career or continue advance your academic career. We're also going to discuss strategies that can help us advance our careers. As teachers, we are always learning, always researching. So how can that translate into advancing our careers? I'm particularly going to concentrate on navigating the TESOL academic market, which is hard. So we're just going to have a look at some of the options to consider. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about the jump between teaching English as a foreign language or teaching English to speakers of other language and teaching English for academic purposes. Next one. So if you're joining us online and I've done my technology okay, you can scan the QR code and answer the prompt of the question that is, how do you want your career to develop? But if you're here in the room and are quite happy to just tell me a little bit about how do you want your career to develop, that would be fabulous. So if anyone wants to share I'm quite happy to pass the microphone. Thank you. So yeah, it's just how do you plan on your career development, or how do you foresee it developing? I love it. Ah, yes, if it's working, it's very reassuring for me. That's lovely. Yeah, I'm afraid I can't share the responses with you because my laptop is not plugged into the screen, but I am having a little look at your answers. And if there is anyone that wants to comment on this or want to share before I move on. Oh, it's okay because it's not even in on the internet. So it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Technology issues. Yeah, I can't quite. Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Well, in the meantime, what I wrote was that I would like to study abroad, something related to English teaching, but not only that, also related to social sciences.
Well, I think I would like to support my students' learning process by creating or developing whatever tool it is necessary to help them achieve their learning goals. Mhm.
Lovely.
Well, the way I want to develop my career is, well, actually, I am in right now in a project with companies, and I am starting developing new programs, but just for engineers and some careers that it's, I think it's a well-known company called Trooper. So then I am starting that.
Sounds
I
fantastic.
like creating programs.
Yes, that's so exciting. Thank you so much for sharing. I can see some answers on my phone, but unfortunately, I can't show them all to you. But I can see what you've written and everyone that's online as well. So that's really really lovely. Thank you so much.
Um, well, thank you. Well, I have had several career paths, I think, because I'm teaching, but I'm also working as a researcher or and translator.
Yes.
So I would like to do a master's degree. and yeah, keep teaching and researching, especially linguistics. So that
Oh,
would be
that's so
my goal.
exciting.
Yeah,
That's really, really lovely.
thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
I think that paths just come up as part of destiny somehow, but of course you can decide. And for me, it's very important to keep on studying. This is what I
Mhm.
wrote, and also I would like to have more time to do more research. If I only
Yeah.
could, that would be amazing. I've been working with translation a lot recently, so that's a new path. I didn't expect to 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 walk, let's say. And I also said that I would like to know more about mental health and these kind of new issues, just to so I could support my students a little bit more. I am very resilient, and sometimes I can understand why people are not that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I also want to comment on one of the answers that we got about doing more research that came up as well in one of the lovely answers. So this is probably from our distance participants. So thank you so much to everyone that answered. It's just really lovely to see all the different interests in career development. So if we can go to the next slide, please. If not to worry, I can just tell you what's going on. So the next slide is, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my journey and sort of like what I've done before and what I'm currently doing. So I think my academic path is quite similar to a lot of the students here. I did my BA in English. I did English philology because I'm that old. So it was still called philology. And while I was doing my BA, I trained as a teacher. I did the CELTA course, which is an intensive course that in theory prepares you to teach, but it's kind of like when you get your driving license, which then you learn how to drive. So I like to think of my CELTA as getting my driver license. I loved it. I was working in Spain in a private language school. And I thought, yes, this is for me. I want to do a little bit more. So I did my master's in TESOL. While I was doing my master's in TESOL, I was also working in a private language school. So I'm quite used to balancing studying and working. It's not for everyone, but I do find that it's quite nice to have the opportunity to try the things that you're studying, and it kind of makes the job a little bit more interesting. So after I finished my MA, I flew to China. That was my first higher education job. I never thought I would end up in China, but a job came out. It looked fine. So I went there and I ended up living there for 2 years. So yeah. But after 2 years, I was ready to go back to Europe. I was a bit homesick. China is really far. So there was this nice looking job in the UK in Sheffield. I applied for it. I got it. It was supposed to be a 10-week contract, but it became an 8-year contract. So yeah, and then after that, I moved to St Andrews. So while I was in Sheffield, I did my Delta, which is like higher level from the CELTA, which again, I think it complements the master's in the sense that with the master's, I gain all that theoretical knowledge, whereas with the Delta, I got that hands-on experience on designing lessons, which I really like. It's quite fun. Because I don't know, I was a bit bored, didn't have anything to do. I decided to start a doctorate. And I did that while I was working in the UK. So I did my doctorate while working full time. So my doctorate was part time. It took 6 years with the pandemic. So it was a long slog. And there were a lot of changes that happened between my original plan and why I ended up researching. For me, it was a very valuable experience. There were times when I absolutely hated my thesis. I just couldn't stand the look of it. But towards the end, I kind of feel that love towards that little book that I wrote, and that's quite exciting. Um, while doing all of that, I've tried to do courses that can complement my teaching. So I learned a little bit about online design because I thought, okay, learning theory is fun, but how can I apply this? I also qualified as a teacher trainer, just because I love working with young teachers and they're full of enthusiasm. I think once you've been teaching for a while, you kind of see other aspects of the journey, but teacher trainers are always so keen, and they're just a pleasure to work with. And then I gained my fellowship and I joined the special interest group for integrating technology for the Ballot Association, and I'm part of the TEFL committee. So this is a Scottish committee where we just try to foster good English teaching and facilitate sessions and professional development to English teachers in Scotland. So Brexit in a way has changed a lot of this. Yes, the market in the UK is challenging in terms of opportunities and in terms of pay. I don't think this is exclusive to the UK. I think when we are language teachers, academics, there's not a lot of opportunities and the pay is not amazing. As I said, this kind of has changed with Brexit. Before, it was really difficult to demonstrate that with the qualifications from different countries, we were okay to teach in the UK. This has changed a lot. So they've kind of moved away from a very Eurocentric perspective to a bit more of a global one, which makes it easier to apply for jobs in the UK. Although opportunities are scarce, there is a lot of work to do and a lot of work that doesn't get done. Like here, like everywhere. I think for us as English teachers, we also have the added challenge that the standard academic contract is 40% teaching, 40% researching, and 20% admin. That doesn't happen in ELT or TESOL. We have 80% teaching and 80% admin, and we're also expected to publish. So it is challenging to navigate, and there is that expectation and there is that pressure from the universities to make sure that we're publishing, but there is no time to publish. They are starting to incorporate a scholarship time, but in my experience, this scholarship time can be quite nominal. So they're like, oh yeah, you get 3 hours a week, but then that's covered and someone has to teach this class, or preparation spills over. So even if the scholarship time is there on paper, it's not necessarily protected. So you have to fight for those hours. Yeah, I mean, I think that the reality for us in academia is just the way it is. So, of course, because of casualization and the fact that finding a permanent role is challenging, and as I mentioned before, there's a lot of work. There tends to be short contracts where you have like a 20% and you're expected to mark every assignment under the sun and things like that. So it's this idea of the gigification context. So it's kind of like you do little gigs, you work here and there and there. Yeah. So in that context, it's quite important to network, which if you're a little bit shy like me, is an extra challenge because it's like, oh, so now I have to make friends to get a job. It's quite challenging. I think I don't mean to present a bleak experience, or I don't mean to show that the academic market in the UK is very depressing, but I think it's important to understand how the market works, because it can help us navigate it a little bit better and also decide whether a career in academia is for us or not. There's no shame in quitting academia and exploring other options. And I think this is something that my PGR students, my supervisors, get really stressed about because they start doing their doctorate, they have these things and ideas, and then they start researching and they feel that it's not for them or it's not exactly what they were wanting to do, and they feel shame and worried. And it's fine to explore other options. That, you know, it's absolutely fine. So that's something to consider as well. It's the idea of you need to know when to grit and know when to quit. So just being aware of that. Is this familiar to your context then? Kind of like, do your doctorate candidates also get panicky about this? Everyone does. So we can have a look at the next one. So this is more or less what the salaries look like in the UK. So research assistant would be at the bottom of the scale, but with a permanent contract. So usually you're looking at about 14.82 an hour. Sorry, I've realized I got everything in pounds. I should have used dollars. My apologies. I do want to draw your attention to the last one. So this idea of the service fee that looks so fantastic, £500 a day. This is what the university gets for your experience. So it's like, because you are experts on the field, if an external university or company wants to benefit from your work, the university makes all that money. You don't make anything. It's just part of your responsibility as part of the university. Everything that you produce in terms of materials as well belongs to the university. So that's another thing to consider. Can I have a look at the next one? And I want to open the discussion a little bit for this one. And it's just a big question. So traditionally in higher education, particularly in the UK, the jobs require that you move around quite a lot. So if you have a family, it makes it a little bit challenging. It's this idea of, you know, you have to work here and you have to work there, and maybe you have a 6-month contract and then an 8-month contract, which means if you're a single man with financial support from your family, that's very, very doable. If you're not a single man and you don't have support from your family, it can be a little bit more challenging. So I just wanted to open up the discussion to have a look at these questions. What implications do these assumptions have on your own lifestyle? So how does that affect us as practitioners? And have you noticed any invisible labor in academic jobs? And how can you discuss such labor if asked about how you manage your workload? So an example of invisible labor for short-term contracts is lecture preparation. Universities think that it takes an hour to prepare a lecture, which is not true. It's not true. So yeah, just I don't know if you want to share your ideas about any of those questions or any comments, and for anyone online, if they want to put them on the chat, that would be great. Mhm.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So as I said, as I was saying, in my case, for example, I work with private courses, right? So I need to prepare, but yes, I am single. I don't have kids. I dedicate my time to this, and I am very committed to that. No, but sometimes my students laugh at my comments because I said, well, since I have nothing to do, I started investigating about this. Since I have nothing to do, I have created this, and I have the presentations because I don't have anything to do. So, but of course, when they see the material, they say, come on, why do you say so? And I said, because I'm sarcastic, simply sarcastic, because I think this is something that people don't notice, especially, I mean, when somebody else pays.
Yes.
In my case, my students pay for themselves, they don't want any schools to come and tell them because they don't like it. I mean, they have tried several universities, schools, English schools, and they said, okay, I want to pay you, but okay, I think, yes, you are doing a good job. No, but being sarcastic is like something that can make me tell them, after this, I have a lot of time to investigate. I really devote a lot of, time and thoughts, and it's, yeah, sometimes I say, oh, really, I don't have a life, but I
Yeah.
can tell you something. I really love it. It's passion. It's something that I say, I am, I don't know, when I travel, when I go to other countries, wherever, I find material, authentic material to take to my classes. And I said, this is in English, or not only in Spanish, because maybe somebody else can say, okay, I can pick up all the brochures in Spanish because I am Mexican. But I said, no, please let me get the material, because that's another thing that many people don't see, that
Yeah.
every single thing you are thinking how to teach or how to involve to make English real. No?
Yeah, and it is in the back of your mind, isn't it? Sometimes you're reading something completely different. You go like, oh, I could just use this to teach the present simple, and yeah, it's constantly.
In something that mentioned Anita, that she is interested in mental health and all this stuff, this has come to my mind, several months. I mean, recently, because of the pandemic, and because I went to the bookstore recently, like, well, 7 months ago, and I started looking for those materials, because I said, it and in English, please, because if I want to share this information, it's gonna be in English. And I have found lots of things, and yes, I guess these are things that people don't see. It's invisible, but we are getting more concerned, I think, about it, because people are not learning sometimes, and they feel frustrated. Maybe this is the thing. No?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments or anything else that you want to add in this topic? Yes.
Just recently, very, very recently, a couple of weeks ago, one of our former students in the English teaching program flew to Ireland to teach English.
Oh,
He's a Mexican, and he used to work with us on Saturday courses, teaching English here. Sometimes I guess my own colleagues, on the Saturday courses used to make fun of him. I said, why? He's so young, and what is he doing here? Where did you get him from? His English is not that good. So I'm really happy to say that he has flown away, that he's now teaching in a university in Ireland, and he's teaching English. So that teacher that some of my partners made fun of, he has gone farther than us in that area. So I'm really happy to share that.
that's really lovely. I think sometimes not being a native speaker is more worrying for us than for the universities. in my experience, because I'm originally from Spain, so and I teach English, and I think people in Spain get a bit more mind blown than people in the UK. There's, with the universities, I think as long as you have the teaching qualification and they can see that you're enthusiastic and you want to teach English, it's not as problematic as it might be in my own country. So maybe that's a similar experience for him as well, like having the opportunity to fly away and get to work in Ireland, which is beautiful and fantastic. It's just a great opportunity. I think, yeah, sometimes we're a bit like, oh, I'm not a native speaker, is it going to be a problem? But we all have an accent, and everyone has an accent, and that accent tells a story. It's just part of our identity. So I think it's quite nice that there seems to be a little bit of a shift in that perspective, and we appreciate all this, and the cultural knowledge that we bring as well, which I think is quite exciting. Was there another comment? Yeah.
In this teaching career, there's lots of things to learn, and many of them, of course, will be invisible, right? But of course, we do it for the pleasure of teaching, because I believe that teaching is you need to have vocation to teach,
Yes.
and mainly, and this is something that you have to like it, you have to enjoy it,
Yes.
right? But you can also learn it. And the important thing is, as you were mentioning before, these paths can open anytime. Well, we should feel very proud about that student, that because they motivate the others, and sometimes the coordination, the program there follows what they are doing and sends us pictures and videos and all about that, because we really feel proud about that. And it's a whole experience, not only for them, but also for us, because it makes our work worth it. Because sometimes we really get demotivated with as teachers, because we've been teaching for quite a long time. But when these things happen, when you find these very good students, that one I have here, on my right hand, they really motivate you, and when they are willing to work and collaborate, so it makes life different.
It makes it worth it. I think when you
sweeter, I believe.
Yeah. When you see one of your students succeed, it's like your own success. Maybe even better. It was makes it for me as well, is what makes it worth it. That's one of the reasons why I love teaching EAP, because I feel it makes a difference. I feel like he's genuinely scaffolding and helping all the students fly and get on with their degrees and their academic progression, which I think is the best part of teaching. It's why we put up with all the problems.
Yes.
Mhm.
Once two students were kind of fighting for some other things. We were in a restaurant, but I told them that they had to speak in English at all times. And then all the waitresses were looking at them, and then this guy looked at me and said, thank you for teaching me to fight. And I said, no, I've never taught you to fight. No, but I can defend myself. At least I can express myself. And in the past, I couldn't. So it was like, oh, I taught them to fight. So that was the satisfaction.
Yes, and that really, it's sometimes we don't realize the impact that our sessions have because we don't get to see it. So having that opportunity to see, yes, it made a difference, is just so very satisfying. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, well, I want to say that regarding this invisibility that Annie was talking about, just recently a fellow teacher asked me why some of us in the English department like to or wanted to study a master's degree or a doctorate, no? What he said, why are you taking courses? What is the purpose, no? And then it makes me realize that we all have different perspectives. We all different have points of view, but then he said, I don't know, what do you do it if you don't get more money, no?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I said, well, it is something rewarding for us, no, to learn something always, no, something new, something that we can share with our students, no, every day, every class, every semester. So I could notice that it is different paths that we take in life, no, in teaching specifically. And well, that is what I wanted to share.
No, that's so interesting because I had a very similar experience. I then get paid more for having completed a doctorate. Like, no one cares. It's entirely up to me. I do feel kind of like what you're saying, learning something new and bringing it into the classroom. I owe it to my students. I feel like I owe to my students to know the latest pedagogical research, the latest ways in which I can scaffold that learning. But it is true that continuous professional development is not that standard across the board, and particularly in our field. I think, without massively generalize, you get a job at a uni and you go like, all right, I've done it. And that's it. And that's really, really dangerous because it leads to a stagnation. And those sessions are not going to be inspiring and they're not going to make a difference. So yeah, I completely understand. And I had so many similar conversations like, why are you doing this? Why are you spending your days studying? And yeah, and it's because I want to make sure that I can give my students the best. So yeah, I completely feel that. Can we move to the next one, please? So I just want to talk a little bit about navigating this market. So we've mentioned our desire to continue our professional development. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can promote our doctorate nets and all the principles that we have and everything that we can bring to the table. I think as teachers, we have a lot of expertise, but it's a little bit hard for us to sell our expertise. And that there are many reasons why that's the case. It can be because we're working on that little department and no one knows what we do. It can be because we can just sell ourselves that well. And that is a shame because, as I mentioned in the other talk, we have a lot to bring to the university environment. First of all, we are teachers, so we know how to teach. We know that lecturing our students for 2 hours is not the best way to do it. We know how to create engaging activities. We know how to create criteria. We know how to evaluate, which, if you've done a doctorate in physics and never taught in your life, why would you know that? So those are, our areas of expertise that we can definitely have a positive impact in the university environment. And as language experts, we also bring that bridge between the academic discourse, and it can be the academic discourse in English or in Spanish or in any other language, and our students' discourse. So it's helping them navigate that little gap. Thank you. So these are the characteristics that Robinson identifies as the doctoral practitioner. But I think, and the reason why I got them here is because I feel they represent teachers in higher education. And these are some of our skills and part of our role, really. I think as teachers, we need to make sure that we are part of our university, but also the wider context. So being part of associations and, presenting at conferences, attending conferences, special interest groups, all that can help us have a healthy dialogue with other universities and other practitioners, and it enhances our teaching. As well, contributing to professional practice and policy. And for a lot of us, like for me, for example, I can't change the policy at university level. I'm not that powerful, but I can change practice in my context. I can integrate funky activities that are fostering motivation. I can share my expertise with my colleagues while they share their expertise with me, and we can create something together that enhances both our professional development. I think as teachers, we are always researching by default. It's just we're not aware that we are doing that all the time. But preparing a class is research. It's the same skill that we're going to be using if we are doing a master's or a doctorate. So it's about navigating the transferability of our own skills. And as teachers as well, we are critical. And that's what we do. We are critical towards pieces of writings that we, have to assess and performances, but we're also critical of policies that we know are not conducive for teaching and learning, and we are critical with our selection of materials. So that's another transferable skill that is essential when we are developing, or engaging with masters or doctorates. Next one, please. Oh, I should have sat before. This is well comfy. So it's this idea of the eclecticism and bringing our expertise into different contexts and having that confidence to bring those expertise into that context. I think particularly for early career researchers and early practitioners, we have to emphasize that as teachers, we are very adaptable and we can teach anything that we got. And we probably, particularly when we start, we have a high level class and a low level class and everything in the middle. And we are reflexive, even if we don't do it formally, we all go like, okay, that class, this worked, that didn't work. So we are incorporating that reflexivity into our practice. And that's something that we can argue in our favor when we don't have a lot of experience. So for early career teachers and researchers, it's just selling that adaptability. I think as well, because we are keeping up to date with the latest research and trying to understand what's happening in our students' brain and how we can help them, we really are a bridge between theory and practice. And we are enacting those new theoretical concepts and we're actually testing them. Because yes, we can write a theoretical piece of paper saying like, oh, if we do this in the classroom, everything's gonna work. Yeah, let's try that in the classroom. Let's see what happens. Is it transferable to my context? What kind of tweaks do I need to make sure it works in my context? So we really are navigating those two spaces at the same time. No wonder why we're tired all the time. Our brain is working at many different levels. And I think as well, as teachers, we have that ability to plan our career. We're quite able to identify, okay, this is important in my teaching context. It's not my area of expertise. What can I do to address that issue? So that can be quite important as well. And it can help us decide where we want to go with our professional development. Any questions or comments for this so far? Awesome. All right, so I'm just going to move on to the next one. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about landing an EAP job. And this is a career option that is worth exploring, either short-term or long-term. Teaching EAP is in very, very, very high demand. And this is particularly the case in the summer. So for your students that are doing their masters or their doctorates, if they want to come to the UK and have a summer there, this is the way to do it. Getting a summer professional job is they're not necessarily part of an academic department. In my case, it is, but in some cases they are hosted under professional units. So they're not that fussed about teachers having a doctorate or not having a doctorate. They just need to be TEFL, which would be finishing their master's or having a Delta. Okay. It gives higher education experience, which is very, very valuable and transferable to other departments, and is a foot in the door. So I think once the university knows you, you are an internal candidate for positions that appear. So it's definitely a route worth exploring. In terms of what it looks like, as I mentioned before, there's the in-sessional support, which tends to go to established teachers in the field. This means they have a permanent contract. However, there are universities that offer this as a pay-as-you-go kind of thing. So they do hire teachers and they are hourly paid, okay? And then is the pre-sessional support, which is what I mentioned as a summer professional, which is a very good option to explore, okay? The whole point of EAP is just developing the students' academic skills. Okay, next one. Thank you. So I've mentioned that in terms of requirements, teachers are expected to be TEFL. These can change depending on the university and how TEFL people they are. Professionals are so better that sometimes arrangements are made and qualifications are not that important. They tend to go from 10 weeks to 4 weeks and everything in between. And they do offer a week of induction that's part of the contract. So you get like a week to get your bearings and understand how it works. In terms of workload, it's not a jolly. Pre-sessionals are highest paid courses. The students are stressed because they have to pass, and everything is in 10 weeks. So everything happens really quickly. There's a considerable amount of marking, but the materials are provided either with a course book or in-house materials that they're already designed. So, you know, one thing for the other. Next one, please. Okay, so in order to get into higher education, and this is particularly in the UK context, apart from the professional courses I mentioned, you can consider joining voluntary teaching like refugee EAP, that is for refugees, and the CARA project, which you get to work with academics that are in different parts of Europe, mostly refugees from Syria. So it's a very interesting project because it's all about academic English and helping those academics kind of like get their English up to a good level so that they can join a university in Turkey, usually. Okay, and it's all done online. Any wider program outreach is always a good option to explore. Of course, editorials and conferences boards is one way of getting your foot in the door as well. If there is a specific area that you're excited about researching, joining a special interest group is always a good way to network and just keep your ear to the ground and learn about new opportunities. You can also go for the option of marking higher or A-levels or IELTS exams. These are usually hourly paid and it's a sessional job, okay? So kind of like for higher and A-levels, it's just in the summer. Whereas for IELTS, you do need to go through the training, but then it's quite stable, okay? Professional association and their journals are also good ways of making contacts and learning about job opportunities. I'm not promoting the advanced higher education, but it's true that in the UK, if you are a fellow of the advanced higher education, it makes a difference in terms of landing a job. It doesn't have to be senior, just fellow is fine, or even associate fellow, but it does make a difference in higher education. Exploring short courses as well that give you that extra specialism in a particular area that you can do from different universities, and they can be done online. If you're prepared to travel, there's a lot of teaching opportunities in higher education in China. South America, Africa, Iran, the Philippines, they're emerging markets, which means the UK wants all those students. So they are opening partnerships. So universities from the UK open a partnership in a different country, and then they ship their students. So that's another area to explore as well. And of course, try to look for institutions that invest in early career review programs and professional development. So I've mentioned a few. Again, you have to travel. Any questions or comments about this so far? No? All right, should we move to the next one? Thank you. So I do have a few questions for you. I've collected the top 3 interviewers' favorite questions. What was the last useful thing that you learned? What's your greatest professional weakness? And how do you manage the pressure of being an early career academic? So, of course, probably the last one is more relevant for your students that are thinking about coming to the UK, but they are the top 3 that they get asked all the time. So I just wanted to open up the floor a little bit and see how would you answer those questions. So our online participants can, of course, answer them in the chat, but any comments about those questions or any ideas how to tackle them? Yes.
That there are always possibilities to keep on learning, no, as
Yes.
teachers. There are always exchanges, programs, courses, no, to interact in our country or in different countries with different people, no. So that's what I just learned.
Yeah. Yes. Any other comments?
I think it's because I have learned a lot since the pandemic started. I mean, basically, because to be honest, I never used technology in the class, well, almost never, no? Let's say that I didn't have the resources in either schools or in the companies to be, using this material. But when we started, and to be honest, it was very stressful. I mean, to be there, and then when for example, the academic department sent us a lot of courses, and then you wanted to finish them, but then your eyes were irritated. And then I said, I want to finish to read all these things. And there were many resources that they sent us, and it was really nice. But I think all about technologies, I think these are amazing things that we have been using. And I have learned, I tried to learn, and sometimes it was very funny. I want to make a comment that when they said that if we wanted to use this device that they gave us, what is the name? I don't remember the thing that is the camera and the earphone box. That's right. Exactly. When they started explaining these things, God, there was a guy next to me, and he was very knowledgeable. And then I was like, but beautiful Gabby, no, Gabby, Claudia Taque. She was giving us this, all right? And she is very like direct, it's amazing. She's the wow, no, I mean, he's a master. And when she started talking, and then I was like, no, I thought that I knew how to use all these things. Thanks God, this guy was next to me. And when he taught me, I said, wow, I have learned a lot. But I was like a little kid, no, a little kid, a nerd, because I was taking notes, because many people are distracted. But I said, I don't like to ask questions again. So I am the kind of person that likes to work alone, doing these things. So I said, no, I need to take notes. And then I was asking questions, and this guy was very kind. It was a Japanese teacher, and I can't forget his name. I don't know if he's listening to us, but it's Juan. His name is Juan, and it was amazing. And he taught me many things. So I think the no, I don't think so, but it was a great guy, and I think I have learned a lot from from them. All right. Mhm.
That's really lovely, and I think it's very useful to be able to bring those learning skills and all the things that happen in the pandemic now and reflect on that as well. I completely agree. Should we move on to the next one? Sure.
Thank you very much. Well,
Thank you.
about being an early career academic teacher, one of my teachers told me not to be so hard on myself because I tend to be very critical of myself. And she told me like, no, you should like learn, calm down, learn that you will make mistakes, you know, and the good thing is to learn from them and to move forward. I think.
Exactly. And I think that's a very valuable teaching for early career. I think we start and we're so eager to get everything right, and mistakes are part of the learning process. And it's really interesting that as teachers, we are very graceful with our students' mistakes. And we're like, you're just learning, you're trying new things. So of course you're gonna get it wrong. This is how you get it right. But when it's about ourselves and our own performance, we don't extend ourselves that grace. We just, I think, because we're used to like teaching and having it right, it's like, why is this wrong? Why can I not do it correctly? And it can be quite frustrating as well. So it's thinking about, okay, I know that my students make mistakes when they're acquiring a new language. My students make mistakes when they're learning new things, and I'm learning new things. So you need to give yourself that space as well. That is so important. Because otherwise you're just going to burn out. So yeah, it's so important. Any more comments on this or no? All right, should we move to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about what happens once you kind of get a job. But it's either a short time position or not quite what you're looking for. I think something that we need to remember is that recruitment for teachers is based on student numbers, and student numbers are unpredictable. So if you want to stay in an apartment, be upfront about it and say, look, if there is an option, I mean to stay in, stay in. If you're working on a research project, chances are the project is not going to finish when it should finish. So flag this early and be like, okay, in terms of what's left to do and what time we got, it's possible that this is going to overspill. It's sometimes it's like assume that it's going to overspill, but it's better to just talk to HR, program directors, and just be like, okay, if this is going to overspill, my contract has to overspill as well. Okay. If you've enjoyed working with that particular research group or in that particular course, you can always suggest additional outputs or extensions. Ask for support for proposals, for bid proposals. Universities are always keen on having researchers busy, so this can be a way to stay in and jump on a new project. Okay. Think as well whether your research or the course that you've taught can be shortened into a one-way workshop, because that tends to attract outsider students, and the universities are always happy to have a workshop that attracts students that are not part of the university, and it generates income, and also it generates interest in joining the university. So that's always a good way to overextend a job. Next one. okay, so sometimes we land an academic job and it's just not quite what we want. But there is a scope for renegotiating, and it's knowing how to navigate that. I think the first thing that we need to remember is that a lot of our jobs are a bit interchangeable because we are answering emails and going to meetings all the time. So it doesn't matter which emails you're answering and which meetings you're going to, okay? Something that we need to remember as well is that there will be a committee or a working group for everything. Sometimes early career researchers and early academics and early teaching experts, they just get so excited about all the opportunities that they just want to do everything. And that's not very helpful. It's not going to help you specialize in anything in particular, and it's going to take over your time. So just be selective. Think as well about how you can make a module your own and take charge of developing that module and its administration, and just make sure while you're navigating that transition between roles that you're not absolutely indispensable, because opportunities can come up, and if no one can replace you, then it's a little bit difficult to jump ships. Okay, as well, try to not to overload yourself, and just remember to have that work-life balance. Sometimes peripheral aspects of our roles are very exciting, and we can incorporate that and sort of like ended up being our main job. So things like if you're very interested in developing online materials or in teacher training, if you keep pursuing that route, then it's quite easy to make that your main job. Okay, next one. Thank you. Sometimes we have to create a job out of the blue. So in that case, just keep reminding people that you're there. So it's this idea of networking and, think about the marking pinch when everyone is stressed and busy, and then you can be like, hi, I'm here to do some marking if you just put me on the payroll system. So that's, one way to show your willingness. Think about as well the things that we do for free for departments or universities, and how that can become a role where you get paid for doing it. A very nice way to start navigating academic jobs and joining departments is talking to master program directors, because, and this happens in the UK every year, master programs recruit a lot of students, and then surprise, surprise, there's not enough academic to supervise the master students. So April time, everyone is desperate to find a supervisor. So that's a good time to join, and remind them that you exist. Knowing the department as well, and if there is something that is not currently being covered and that you can cover, then making that pitch and that suggestion can help. Try to present it in block of 50s, because that 50 hours, because that's how they make the programs in the UK. If you are presenting at a conference or doing anything like that, sometimes the university will sponsor you. So it's always good to be like, oh, I'm working on this, and if you've worked with them before or been a professional, they might be able to send you abroad. And if you have a favorite journal, because as you know, reviewing for journals is something that we do out of the goodness of our hearts. But editorial assistants, proofreading, screening editors, they do get paid for that role. So that's something that you can consider as well. And the next one. Thank you. So think a little bit about what does your discipline need and what do you need and how can you develop those skills. So, if you're thinking about doing longitudinal analysis, do you have the skills to do so? And if not, how can you get them? Do you know how to navigate in Vivo, SPSS, all those things? I've mentioned before that being an academic in higher education is about answering emails. It's also about Excel spreadsheets. So if you don't know how to use Excel, please, yes, that's, yeah, it will make your life easier. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. It's so true. I spend a lot of my day looking at spreadsheets, just going like, how is this? How is this teaching? But it is. It's just it is going to happen. So just make sure that that's there. Applying for the small grants as well. I'm a big fan of applying for everything because maybe you're lucky, maybe you get it. Exactly. Exactly. So just give it a go. Um, I mentioned before, this is peer reviewing is free, but it is a good way of networking and also staying on top of your field. I think when we are teaching and studying, and it can be a lot. So one way of making sure you're up to date with the literature is just reviewing. It looks good on your CV, and it is helpful to stay on top of new publications. Your master thesis, your PhD, or any project that you're working on can be pitched as a book. So you can also, you don't have to aim super high. You can also look at regional markets, but it's quite accessible for publication. And I think these will be my top tip for your students and early career researchers. Find a mentor and don't be shy, ask, because the worst thing that can happen is that they say no. But learning how to navigate academia, specific departments, specific fields, it's a skill. And I think we've all had mentors to get where we are. So it's kind of, I don't know, in my case, it is my pleasure when a student approaches me and goes like, oh, I want to, move into teaching EAP or explore doing a doctorate. I'm super happy to mentor them because I've had that experience and I wouldn't have been successful without that. So I think in that sense, we are quite nice and quite happy to develop those mentorship roles. So always ask. Next one, please. Thank you. So these are some top tips. They are not mine, but I thought I will share them with you, and then maybe we can discuss which one do you think is the most helpful and why. And obviously, if you're joining us online, you're welcome to put it on the chat. So I'll just give you a minute to read it. So would you like to share which one do you feel is the most relevant or useful? To become international. Mhm.
Thank you. So I studied in a school an English school in Cambridge many years ago, 23 years ago, and I remember I told my parents before I went there, I told them I'm going to get a job in here. No, forget about me. I mean, I will be there. And then when I was there, I was so homesick, and I really missed them, especially my parents. And then when I got back, my mother was always worried about that. But then when I arrived, my father asked me, "Did you find a job?" And I said, "No, I will miss you." I was 23 years old. But nowadays, sometimes my students ask me, why can't I go there? And then I say, well, I wish I could go, but people who want to learn English are here in Mexico. So I go, and I have traveled to Europe several times, but just for fun. And then I said, well, but anyway, once when I was in Belgium, the guy that I was living with asked me if I had wondered how to live in that place. And I said, if you help me get a job here, yes, I can come. And sometimes I think about it. And since I am single, so I can move. So there's no problem. So this is my next step as well. So when you were asking what I want to do, it's like just making my programs is something that I love. But I think to become international, why not? Sounds good.
Yeah, and like EAP is a lovely way for English teachers to start that journey, and who knows where it can lead. So that is fantastic. It's quite a nice way to do it. Come over for a professional. That would be great. Yeah. Any other comments or any other of the tips that
Well, I think that the one that really like struck a chord in me was take on a facilitating or leadership role in your organization or internationally and
Mhm.
try to do some good. Participation is how you become known. I think that the part that says try to do some good, it's important because as teachers, I think that we sometimes forget that we are like a causative person. And I mean that because we not only motivate our students, maybe we motivate like a third person that our students know, and that creates like a chain of change and goodness, and to, I don't know, like to find solutions for some problems. So I think that's really important. And even more if you become internationally known, well, that's going to be amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and it's about all the things that you can bring to the table, and how you can make that happen and push for that change. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to point out the realistic aspect of one of those.
Yes.
It says, where is it? I lost it. Here, instead of reviewing for lots of different journals, target a smaller number where you might eventually have a realistic chance of joining the editorial board. I think the aspect of that,
Yeah.
something that is realistic, not only here in academia, but in your life in general,
Yes.
is going to save you from a lot of headache.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think sometimes we can be a bit overly enthusiastic, and maybe we don't think realistically about how long all these tasks are going to take. And I can really relate to that as well, because I love reading articles, and I'm particularly happy reviewing for like entry level journals, because I think writing an academic article is so hard and getting published is so hard, and navigating all that is really hard, and it's really emotional because it's your work, and then you get the feedback and they tear it apart, and it's like, oh, there's a lot there. So I like working with journals and reviewing for journals that target new writers, and just help them, develop that thick skin while guiding them through the process in a gentle way. So that's kind of what I do now, rather than, reviewing for all the aspects that I'm interested in. I had to like flame it down. And it's hard. It's hard to say no to things. And I think particularly for early career researchers, it's like, oh my God, am I losing the best opportunity of my life? But we need to know, that's why thinking about where we want our career to go is so important, because we need to know what's going to help us and what we can realistically do within our time constraints. So I think that realistic aspect is so important. Definitely.
Yes, I just wanted to say something that you just mentioned. It is so difficult to say no. We always say yes. I don't know why. We always say yes, and sometimes we don't know how challenging things might be. So yeah, it's important to say no. But some of the things that you have mentioned here, for example, this part of developing a balanced portfolio is really hard because we are supposed to be working and writing
Yes.
academic things, research, and it's really hard because we don't have the time. And it takes a lot of effort, and it's hard. Another very important thing that I believe it's part of something that we lack maybe here is that we don't have this international vision because I don't know why it's part of the structure of our university, but at the same time it's because of the money it implies, the time it implies. If you send teachers or professors to other schools in Latin America or somewhere like that, who's going to work here?
Yes,
Right?
yes.
I mean, that's mainly part of the problem, I believe, because when you get a scholarship, you have to leave the place where you're working, go there, and when you come back, it's even harder because you have to, to keep up with the
Yes.
Joneses, as they say. So it's really hard, but I believe that sooner or later we have these opportunities, not for everybody, not just for us, but for everybody, the students, and maybe with time, with globalization, the university has opened some other schools somewhere else. So maybe one of these days we can be invited to go.
Yeah, I think,
Yes.
and with
Okay.
with
Thank
the
you.
online environment, I think collaboration is even more possible because I don't know if you heard about COIL. I don't know what it stands for, but it's this global platform where universities look for collaboration, and it can be done online, which reduces the cost because it's very expensive to be sending people abroad. I mean, it doesn't solve the issue of we don't have time, but universities post the projects they're working on, and you can apply to facilitate that role, and that tends to work quite well. I'll show it, and I'll show you once we finish this because I can then show you the web page. But yeah, the COIL platform, I think that's fantastic. It's quite a nice way to explore and just working with people in a different context so that you can exchange and have a bit more of a better understanding of the field, which is so valuable. But I do take the point of attendance this time. Yeah. It is really complex. And, on the one hand, there's that desire of collaboration and bringing the best and trying to get the best for our students. But on the other hand, we have meetings to attend to and we have marking to do and we've got deadlines to meet. And it is hard. It is hard. Something that I find quite helpful, and I'm guilty of doing this. I try to get a paper on what I'm teaching at the moment. So it's coming up in May, I'm doing a teacher training course. So my plan is to get a mini research project from that course and publish, because otherwise it's just an extra layer of complexity. So it's a bit of a cheap way, but any other comments or? All right, so I just wanted to finish with a few questions. I'm doing okay this time. I was so worried about my timing all day. I'm so pleased I'm not doing that bad. So we can have a look at the next slide. These are kind of the questions that I wanted to finish with. Yes, anything that you find surprising, and whether your ideas regarding career development have changed at all or not. Of course, the people online can use the chat, and if you want to share any ideas, you're very welcome to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, this last idea about teaching and research, okay, for me it is so interesting because every semester we have lots and lots of groups, and we know that they are all different, no? And yeah, of course, okay, that is always, no? That is the objective. Ah, okay, yeah. Yeah, remember.
Ah,
But then, yes, well, my idea was that knowing lots of students every semester is like, I don't know, something really interesting because of the different phenomena that, of course, no, when they are learning the language they are practicing. So as you mentioned there, teaching and doing research in applied linguistics
Yeah.
is really interesting for me. Yes.
yeah. Yeah, and it's integrating it, isn't it? So yeah.
Exactly, as you just mentioned, for example, you have, we can do research on what we are currently doing, but the worst thing is that we also have our own interests.
Yes.
So it's like too much somehow, but well, sooner or later we manage to do something here, something there, something everywhere, but it sounds like a song. But yes, I mean, that's a big challenge.
It
And
is.
yes, sometimes we do care about the money because we have families, we have many things to pay, but at the same time, we just do it for the sake of teaching, for the sake of learning, and this is what counts also.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that is something very important, at least that's what I think, and it's applied to me, is that we have to manage our time, no? And to learn to say no, as Annie said, because sometimes we are overwhelmed with the time, and they ask for something else, and we say, yes, yeah, no problem, okay?
But yes,
It-
problem.
yeah, but there's a big problem because I don't have time, no, not even for myself. Yeah, and it's really hard. And I think that it is what we should learn at the very first thing in our list now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as well, there's that emotional component of sometimes saying no to colleagues. It's like, it's so hard, but at the same time, there's research that comes from our own teaching, research that comes from our own interests, our lesson prep, our marking, something's gotta give. So yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's just looking at what we can get rid of, and yeah. That's why I put the juggler in the first picture, because I do feel like we are juggling 50,000 things all the time. And it is quite challenging. So if I can have a look at the next slide. So this is just a little bit of a summary. So kind of like of the ideas that we've discussed. Anything new that I kind of want to draw your attention to? Think about who's applying for the job, as in who's the target for the job and how they're being filtered. In general, desire characteristics are not that important, but obviously the required ones they will be. In the UK, they love their cover letters. So do give it some thought. because the cover letter can make or break an application. Internal candidates, you know, if they know you and you're doing a good job, of course, they're going to look at your application with different eyes. So that's why it's always good to have a foot on the door. There are benefits to everything and drawbacks to everything. Staying in the same institution for a long time gives you a very good understanding of how things work, but you're not going to experience any new approaches. So thinking about what suits you, whether it's staying in the same institution or moving around. Always moving around can be a little bit of a learning curve, but it's very beneficial for career development. And this is just something like, particularly for early career researchers, like Twitter is great to connect with other academics, but it's important to consider, you know, our professional presence online and in our sort of like real presence where we do all the things. And that's everything from me. Thank you so much for having me and your participation. Thank you. Yes, all the things that I've been chatting about. You know, in case you're like, "Oh, that was so amazing! I want to read more." Yes. And you're more than welcome to use it, adapt it, butcher it, anything that you want.